really great to be here. I remember watching Facebook Developer Garage launch online, and various friends went along and said many good things about it, so it was really nice to get an invitation to come along and talk. I'm a civil servant. As taxpayers, if you're paying tax, good to know I'm doing two jobs for the money. My day job is working at the Central Office Information, which is a marketing comms entity that runs many different campaigns for government, whether it's encouraging you to pay your tax for the January 31st deadline, encouraging you to study some particular skill, join the armed forces, drive safely, lots of different campaigns like that. But I'm also more recently working part-time at number 10 in the Cabinet Office in a joint comms directorate. And I'm responsible for the Prime Minister, the Cabinet Office and the Deputy Prime Minister's digital presences and channels. I've grown up with digital since about '94 when I helped start New Media Age. And one of the things I know about this industry, this community, is that it's good to talk, to relate and to communicate. So that's why I'm sort of being allowed out to come and talk tonight. It's really, really good to be able to hear. It's a conversation. I'd like to tell you about what we're doing, but do follow on Twitter, and it'd be great to hear other comments and thoughts going forward. So I've got my colleague Anthony Simon here as well, who works on many of our campaigning aspects of things there. What I want to do today is show how we're using digital channels and Facebook in particular, how we're having to live with the joys of managing all these different channels and the interactions on them. And then I want to move to looking at how users, yourself as a citizen, a business, as a person, can engage with government on many different levels, both in terms of policy making, using services, and possibly other things as well. So that's what I'm going to cover tonight. So hopefully I can rattle through that in 20 minutes. You're a fast-talking American. I'm a fast-talking Scot. I've got a cold, so apologies if I die of hacking cough halfway through, but Heather tells me she's got the Hall's mentalitis over there as well. Canadian, my apologies. I know, as a Scot, I know what you mean, sorry. As I said, I recently started over at number 10, and I have a couple of new colleagues. This is Larry the cat, who literally walks around the place and is a very good mouser, helping keep the mice down there. So he's one new colleague. And the second colleague is someone called Steffi L. Now, Steffi L isn't a real person. Steffi L is my acronym for remembering all the different channels that I'm responsible for. And we've got the site, we've got Twitter, the email, Flickr, Foursquare, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn as well there. And this is part of a strategy we have, sort of called 3D Digital. We want to have more engagement with more users in a deeper way over more channels as well, because that's where people are and that's where people are spending the time. My background in marketing communications is that, particularly with government messaging, you have to actually go where people are. You can't expect them to turn up to your event or whatever and actually engage. You need to go and attract their attention. And some of the examples I'll give later, the armed forces, are a great example of how we've engaged with young people on how do they choose a career in service there. So that's kind of who we hang out with. So in reality, a couple of things that we've introduced recently over the last couple of months. We've put the Prime Minister on LinkedIn. It's obviously a business optimized network. It's been very useful for following up with people when he meets them at events, visits, etc. And we've used that quite well for some engagement round about business policy. How do we encourage startups and growth? So some of you know Tech City. Some of you may know some of the Startup Britain guys as well. It's a great place to be for that there. We use Foursquare as well because we're a great believer in leaving a digital footprint in the places we visit. The PM gets out to many different parts of the UK and abroad on public service, and what we're keen to do is more than just sort of have the ephemeral media coverage of the event. We want someone, when he goes to industrial park or check in at a company, they see something that maybe the Prime Minister's visited there and why he came as well. So absolutely love place. I've got a geography degree. My background is in place and community, and I love that type of thing. I think it's a great way of having an additional touch point, an extra digital footprint remaining there. And then there's Foursquare as well, which we've been on for quite a while now, and I think we've got over 150,000 likes at the moment. I know that's not the metric to talk about in general, but it's a good active community. And what I want to do is share a couple of examples tonight, some of the things that we've done. It's relatively simple and straightforward. I'm sure you may have a million ideas about the things we could be doing, tricks we're missing as well. Love to have a conversation afterwards about that type of thing there. But again, it's limited resource. We have a number of channels to manage. We have content to create for these different channels and to put the right content, the right tone in the right place. So there's only so much string that can be rolled out to do that type of thing there. So this is the page that we operate. We work very closely with our colleagues in the press office on that generation of content. Traditionally, a statement would be issued, a press release, a visit, maybe a photograph. Over time, we've built up a lot richer amount of content. We get a choice of photography, images that we can put up. We can use video as well. And there's a whole host of events that we do there. So it's been going for a number of years now, and it ticks over quite nicely. As you see, if any of you have been to Downing Street, it's probably for a public event. And it's one of the things that's really amazed me joining the team over there, was just how many people actually pass through the door to a reception, whether it's to thank people for a particular community action or recognise a charity there. So a lot of people coming through, so we get to take images of that and report on that as well. Plus the more formal, serious things that are part of the Prime Minister's duty. For example, you may recall the Welsh miners dying in the autumn, that dreadful cave-in there, putting up a note of condolence up on the site as well. So there's the exciting, the interesting, the glamorous, the serious and the sombre as well. And one of the things that the team that we have work on is getting the tone right. It's easy to slap stuff up in digital. It's much more difficult to make it stick in a way that people are not complaining about or criticising. So we really do spend our time ensuring the tone is correct. Here are just 4 examples of some of the recent activity that we've done. The PM issues a New Year's message every New Year at New Year. So that's up there, and that goes out, and it gets quite an interesting global reach. We have over 1,000 comments on that message, so that's done quite well. There, it's fairly straightforward content, but it's short, impactful, and obviously gets viewed by people there. To the right, we've started doing some experimentation with the use of infographics to illustrate some of the stories or campaigns that we're involved in. This is a couple of infographics from a recent campaign around troubled families. How do we focus on helping troubled families sort out their problems and the wider social impact they have as well? And we've been absolutely really impressed by the level of engagement infographics have. So the visualization is great. You guys understand that. You've grown up with social media and people sending you what Facebook are doing next in one simple infographic. In government, we've been watching that, we've been keeping an eye on that, when we're actually doing a lot more with it now, because it gets the interest. People can see it at a glance, they can understand it. We know it's difficult to do, to create that wonderful, beautiful image that is evocative, informative, and drives an action as well. And that's something that we're learning a lot more about, how you actually create the asset there. On the bottom right, the bottom left side there, we also have some interesting people come along to number 10, as I said. This was a military wise choir just before Christmas, with the reception for services that were involved in the Libya campaign earlier this year. Being military, the military wise choirs came along as well. So we ended up with some video footage from that and some stills as well, and we shared that, and that got a slightly different group of people that were liking that and being involved in that. So your talk about which groups are which, absolutely fascinating in terms of finding out what the crossover is. Are people that like that also liking a policy announcement or not? Be lovely to find out some more there. And then there's the external visits. In the bottom right there, we had a visit to the McLaren Technology Centre, which was great. And again, that got phenomenal interest from another well-distinct group of people, Formula One fans as well. So it's quite interesting where our content gets picked up and how it actually gets used there. So we're relatively pleased with the performance of Facebook as a means of reaching out people. But it has its limits, and you may bear this out as well if you're responsible for a brand page or a fan page. Some things resonate better than others, and this is an example of where things resonate well. This is where we got the PM to comment about the Department for Education Give a Child a Home campaign, which is an adoption and fostering annual event that we run in late November, encouraging people to consider adopting there. And we know there are issues with the public system for doing that. That's what the PM's quite ardent about, is trying to fix the system so it works and we get children out of care into homes there. And what we found that was particularly interesting was when we asked, for example, people to give examples or to tell their story, Facebook performed really well, incredibly well. And my colleague Anthony and I were talking about this, and Anthony made a very good shrewd judgment of it. He said, it's experiential. It's about feeling. People want to tell the story of their experience. You could go into a policy-making forum or LinkedIn or somewhere else or ask a question in a formal consultation. How should we improve the adoption policy? And you won't get half the response, whereas people here were spilling their heart out, because I think it has become so much of everyday life for people that they do talk and share on Facebook. So for some of the social areas, it's really quite fascinating understanding what people are saying and the stories they're telling there. So for us, that was a great opportunity to listen to the views there. The flip side to all this ability to garner insight is the ability to analyse it as well. And this is not a criticism of Facebook, but it's a big issue that we face generally when we engage with the public, is if it works well, great, we're happy, but they tell us lots of stuff and we have to analyse it all. It's a massive unstructured data problem. So it's quite an interesting mix about how many poll questions do you ask that are yes, no, or very simple answer, and how many open fields do you include? Because someone's got to go through and read the response, analyse it, code it, label it up, and put it into categories there. So we end up with a lot of lists as well. So it's probably a problem perennial to market researchers and sociologists around the world. But it's one we have to deal with as well. When people do talk to us, we have to analyse it and see what's happening there. Widening out into elsewhere in government. This is just some quick grabs from the RAF recruitment. Facebook is there in the middle. It's a highly important element of this sort of virtuous circle of content. We have YouTube and Flickr, Twitter as well. And the history of this is quite interesting. Hands up who remembers Bebo. We actually were in Bebo in 2006, and it worked really well for us, because guess what? That's where young people are talking about their careers and their futures and what skills and what aspirations they have. And if you create a community and content around about their aspirations and what they want to do, and if they want to ask questions about things, it's a no-brainer. It was radical back then. So obviously with the way the tide flows, we moved to Facebook, and it's a great community across all the services, RAF, Army, Navy, Marines. We find that the power of the community is wonderful, not just in terms of helping encourage people to make an inquiry about joining the forces, but also educating them about what's required and them educating themselves. For example, a lot of the services have a fitness test. You have to be yay fit to take part. They will coach each other. I did how many repetitions in a minute, what you did, the fitness test is this level. So they're actually coaching each other and sharing a good peer-to-peer support network as well. So that was kind of an unexpected benefit, but it's just great to see that sort of community going on there. Another example, probably a wee bit fresher, Royal Navy Engineers Challenge. If you want to have a look at sort of the current activity, particularly the Royal Marines, they have some pages and content which are quite engaging. This is where we took our first steps in gaming, and we created an app, the Engineer Officer Challenge. The big challenge is if you are an engineer, hands up who's got an engineering degree background? Anyone? Career choices for you. You could join a big company, a startup, whatever, engineering, different sectors. How do we persuade you to join the Royal Navy as an engineer? Well, the gaming mechanism works really well because you like solving problems and dealing with challenges, doing it against the clock, and you're also quite competitive. Our insight, told us. So why don't we get you gaming against each other, sharing this gaming experience? I scored this. What did you score? And it worked really effectively as a recruitment tool to get people to inquire about the career in there. We put the app, the game on Facebook as well. And again, it worked really well as a method of doing that as well. So we're beginning to sort of merge content forms. But one thing that is common is Facebook is obviously an excellent place for that content to reside and to be used and interacted with by the community. A slightly older one is the Act on CO2 campaign, where we reached out to people to try and encourage them to change their carbon generating activities. Turn lights off and more advanced things like that. This was great because the thing we learned in terms of content, it wasn't all about us generating the content, but reaching out to the user community. And we can maybe add a spotlight to them and onto their activity and what they've done as well. And the reason I include this example, even though it's quite old, is probably the next slide. We asked people to send films in and photos, etc. We've got this absolutely gorgeous mind map from someone. And I think that's one of the joys about this, the serendipity, getting stuff that's a bit different, that unstructured data. So if you're a social researcher, how do you code that as a response? A bit of a tricky one. But it worked well, and it is a very good support to the campaign going forward. Okay, I want to move on to the next bit, how to participate. I want to show you some resources that are available to you if you are developing. I want to tell you some things about engagement and taking part in consultations as well. that if you are an active citizen, and I think according to Oxford Internet Institute, only 18% of internet users are sort of civically active online, either seeking out government information or taking part in a campaign there. And a lot of people are incredibly enthusiastic about the power of the internet and the connections to bring down boundaries and encourage that participation in civic processes at whatever level, whether it's your parish council, your community council, or international ones as well. So do get involved, the opportunities are there. The first up was data.gov.uk, which we helped the Cabinet Office put together and is now run quite successfully. We have thousands of data sets. Come and mash them up. App version, some ones that have been done already. Classic ones like where can I park a bike, exploring the spend of local government. Why is that bus stop there? Why does it cost that one? Renewable energy map, traffic visualizations, getting a feed of jobs from the Job Centre Plus. It's there, it's open data, we encourage people to use it, and we see it as a chance to generate ideas and economic growth as well. The second one is the red tape challenge. And again, it's this part consultation, part engagement. Many of you will be running small businesses, some of you may be running big businesses, but often government has put rules in the way that get in your way as well. We've been running this conversation for a number of months, and it'll go for quite a while, looking at different sectors of the economy. We're asking people to nominate legislation. Things need to get rid of. You just need to get rid of that one. It just gets in the way. It's ridiculous. It's costing us too much money there. So we have a focus on that one. It's also, from a data point of view, quite interesting because it also pulls in legislation.gov.uk, which is a great site. And the guy behind it is, he's the first guy to tell me about triples. And then I remember someone told me about Facebook, I went, oh, those things, right, that's it there. So if you're a data fiend, do get stuck in there. And if you're a normal person as well, do have a look around there for your sector, and please contribute and make suggestions there. They're assessed by departments, and then the ministers give a response on what can be cut out there. And then finally, in terms of doing business with government, Heather asked me to cover this one. You may be aware we're in time of austerity. We had massive cuts, communication activity and spend dropped by about 80% in a couple of months. COI, up until the end of December, was responsible for many of the frameworks of suppliers to which departments could then go to and ask for services from. That's gone to an organisation called the Government Procurement Service. Just quick grab the site there, not the most glamorous one in the world, but you know in the right place. They're currently asking people to sign up for a dynamic marketplace for certain services. It's a good opportunity for small suppliers to register an interest. There's no guarantee of business, but do have a look at it and see if your skills match, and sign up, and you'll get informed about the next stage of what's happening in terms of allowing SMEs to compete for business from the public sector there. And the final part is some elements of digital activity go to the Government Digital Service. They're around the corner in Aviation House. Is there anyone from the GDS, any developers just given in the room? Okay. They are responsible for the successor to DirectGov. Alpha.gov.uk, beta.gov.uk. So do check out their site as well. They'll be writing and commenting about things. That's the alpha there, and they'll be busy beavering away in the beta as well there. So do have a look at that when it gets announced, and feedback to them as well. But it should be quite interesting when they do reveal it. Finally, looking ahead to the year, it's what we make it. I think that's the wonderful thing about Facebook and social platforms as well. We can make these connections. Used to have to wait years for a big IT supplier to create something that maybe met some of your requirements but didn't do it all as well. So my final word is just go out there and have fun, make the connections, use the platforms well, and wish you all the best with your businesses. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Nick. So we are running a tiny bit over, but we have someone from the government here. We can't miss this opportunity to ask a couple of quick questions. So anybody have questions for Nick? All right.
How do you measure the performance? Just want to know how you measure the sort of performance indicators on your Facebook groups. What your marks of success are.
Yeah, we've got some, obviously the counts as well, but we because it's such a variety of content, it's quite difficult to compare apples to apples as well. So that's an area we're looking at in a lot more detail, because we have certain things that come along. For example, the Syrian Electronic Army, who think with spam, etc. So it's quite difficult doing like for like. But we know quite quickly, and that's the beauty of this stuff, whether something's popular or not there. So we have some internal, sort of, not formal benchmarks, but we kind of know if this is ahead or behind schedule, as it were. The other thing particularly intrigues is that driving between channels. If we tweet about something, does it result in the click-through there? Traditionally in government, within digital comms, particularly campaigning, because you can do a lot more planning ahead, you can have quite good KPIs. So for example, the RAF have quite a complex evaluation model with 7 different KPIs. That's all around that marketing funnel of getting people to actually apply there. So again, because you can plan, you can design the hooks in, measure things properly, and get the data out. We tend to be quite reactive and quite short term because of the news agenda. So it's quite a quick game, but it's a good question. Yeah.
One more quick question. All right.
Robin.
Let me bring the mic over to you.
This is an engineer.
I did do a degree in aeronautical engineering, Nick, thanks.
You
Quick question, and I'm not being disingenuous, but could you describe exactly how David Cameron or the team is using LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. Anthony, do you want to cover that one off?
Yeah, sure. I can explain a bit about LinkedIn. We've used it to engage, to help the Prime Minister engage with people who he meets as course of his business. So he'll be meeting people who are, for example, business people. We'll be meeting people in manufacturing, as he has done recently. He's meeting people from educationalists just this week, who we've linked in with. So rather than taking the decision, as Facebook is, people could join in from whoever, anyone could like the Prime Minister if you like. We've chosen just to choose some people that the Prime Minister can engage with. We've actually found it very useful, very different from Facebook in that we've, for example, around ideas to help growth, help the economy in this country. People come back with some really useful, high quality responses that we've been able to feed off to the right areas of government to actually help to help in those areas. So yes, it's a very small number at the moment, relatively, but it's something we want to grow, and I think it's watch this space because we're bound to be using it more in the future.
All right, thanks guys. Another round of applause for Nick.